When you join a group, just be aware you're going to be judged by the worst members of that group. That's how identity politics works. Hello, fellas. It is Mid's Watch. We're on, I don't even know what episode is now, 100 and something. We're nearing the end, though. I've got maybe half a dozen of these left, so if you're catching this, it's either the last episode or one of the last episodes. And this one's kind of, it's a meta. I don't think it's going to matter as much for your marriage or your sex life, but it is a good example of frame. And it's kind of one of those things that comes up, like you're in a space, you're swapping notes with other men. Eventually, if you get enough guys together and make something popular enough, which is not doesn't need to be very popular, you're going to get the attention of women. And that's when all of this BS starts. So I guess you could use this as a metaphor for when you start doing co-ed things with your married friends, like dinner parties or joining a club. They start invading women in the space. And I would ask you, if you can remember, to go back to the male social matrix. I know I got a video on here on it. If not, there's the original essay from it. If I can remember, I'll put it in the description, but I mean, you'll be able to follow along well enough. So this was an editorial by the Red Pill Alternative 42, which is old member, not important. Why the red-pilled women hate married red pill, or how all of you failed a large-scale fitness test inspired by the recent thread and blue-pilled professor's subsequent meltdown. What does all that stuff mean? The red pill women was, like back then, it was a lot of guys had their blogs. That was like the first iteration of red pill. And then everybody who didn't have enough for their own blog would come to the subreddit, which was made just about 2012, 2013. And everybody was swapping notes there. It was a great time. A bunch of branches came out. So there was the red pill originally. And then married guys were tired of hearing, oh, just next your wife and kids. So they made the married red pill. And then a bunch of women who were dating some of the senior red pill guys, they wanted to make a red pill women. How can I get you there too? There was a bunch of girls there, and they eventually started talking about race realism and class warfare. And for some reason, that's every time a girl tries to red pill, they always end up going towards race realism and social classes. It's every time. It turns into a Jane Austen novel, and I don't understand it, but it is. There was also a place called Purple Pill Debate, and this was just where the idea was supposed to be we come together and start swapping notes with women, but it very quickly turned into crapping on red pill guys. Anybody who knew what they were talking about got kicked out. Anybody who was a nice laughing stock got stuck around to be a lolcow. And what's a lolcow? It's a clown. It's essentially a clown. So there was this beef that started. I don't remember what the issue was. I think there'll be some hints at it here. Essentially, the red-pilled women got mad at the married red pill guys. The married red pill or the red pill women had a temper tantrum and kicked everybody out, deleted all of their content. And that's why most of the really good red pilled women stuff is gone. Women had a temper tantrum thinking that it was some kind of power play. They deleted everything, they removed everything, and it basically nuked it from orbit. So, and this is coming right out of the tail end of that. Again, metaphor for your life. Oh, we just finished a round of dread. My wife and I are back together and we're going to our first dinner party. Think of it from that context. So we use the term red pill as a sort of in-joke waking up to a system of lies, as like in the Matrix. We also use the term red pill to refer to a man who is aware of the system and has woken up. These are fine, at first. Later, I've come to know that the red pill is just a term for a very specific sexual strategy. The red pill subreddit that started it all is literally discussion of sexual strategy in a culture increasingly lacking a positive identity for men. Rule 0. And then there's the married red pill. Same sexual strategy, but for men in marriages. To the boys in the red pill, married red pill is anathema to the system of apraxeology. The red pill eschews marriages. Unsurprisingly, married red pill generally eschews them too. In fact, I'd go so far to say is that if married red pill men were to get divorced, they would not get married again. I'd go even further to say if that we were to do it all over again, and married red pill men would probably have never gotten married in the first place. Which is actually fundamentally true, it's like as much as official stance comes. Not pro-marriage, anti-divorce grape. So that's the red pill for men. Execute a sexual strategy that maximizes sexual success for the man. Marriage tends to counteract that maximization of sexual success. Success, for men in a red pill sense, is as many sexual partners as possible. The long game may be to find a virtuous woman from who he finds pleasure with both sexually and companionship, and then have some kids. Legitimately, even a red pill guy has some realistic ideal as to the nature of a man's true biological process. A lot of words to say, you make your own goals. Marriage doesn't play into that. It provides no sexual success to men and is prohibitive. I'm not going to get into that again. If you've been around this space, you've heard the very, very well thought out or deranged anti-marriage creed. And I agree. It's a very bad deal for men from a strategy standpoint. It is taking an L. On top of that, there is this odd little subreddit called the Red-Pilled Women. One may wonder why they refer to themselves when red pill when they're women. But remember, it's just an interchangeable term for sexual strategy. In their case, the sexual strategy for chicks. A man strives to be the top 20% or better of men in order to attract and keep as many women as possible for the purposes of sexual access. His strategy is a singular one. Women, on the other hand, are dualistic. Being the gatekeepers of sex and the bearers of children, she wants the best possible genetics for the strongest possible child while also procuring as much resources as possible in order to ensure that child's survival and thriving. The red pill refers to this as alpha fucks, beta bucks. Doesn't it sound excessively intellectual for talking about our dicks? I agree. And I'm just preaching to the choir here. We all know this stuff, but we seem to forget it from time to time, and I have to specify these things in order to make what I'm about to say clear. Red pill women are red pill through and through. Their advice is geared towards finding the best scenario for child production and child rearing, but while the red pill speaks about this stuff very overtly, red pill women are much covert about it, soft even. They won't come out and say it, but they will infer it. And they clearly dislike the married red pill as a whole, though they seem to, at least, not hate the normal red pill subreddit. But why? The same mindset. And the married red pill should look better, as it's about a man being a good husband, and the red pill is about, well, nothing to do with marriage. So why the love for the one and the hate for the other? It's simple. The married red pill disrupts the dualistic mating strategy the women thought she was successful with. We take that provider guy who's locked down in a marriage and mold him into the lover archetype. She didn't want to marry that guy. She didn't want to marry a man who has options with younger and hotter women that are attracted to, because, oh my God, women like the idea of that comfort. So why doesn't TRP get this hate? It's easy. They have ultimately filtered themselves from the pool of marryable men by identifying themselves as both men who won't marry and men who say they don't want to marry. And why don't they want to marry them anyways? Because they see these guys as they see us. Men who aren't truly top tier, alpha male if you want to call it that, but it's kind of goofy. But they're trying. Basically liars. They want a man that just gets it. And the fact that you have to read it on a forum means you'd ultimately don't. Which, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of how things work. It's a skill like any other. You learn it by learning it. Where you learn it doesn't really matter. So in short, every issue they have with the married red pill space, the faking and the lying about not being a provider, leads them to assess that this is exactly what the red pill women are doing. Pretending to be a high-value woman who has that's trying to marry down. Essentially, it's like we're projecting. He's got a whole lot of words in this, so I'm kind of skipping a lot of it. But anyways, you all, and this is by us, including me, this is me back then doing the arguing on the internet thing, you all got shit tested by the red pill women and then decided to argue about it with them. You failed a large-scale shit test. Red pill women are red pill. They're just not our red pill. A woman's strategy is at odds with our strategy. They have to be adversarial, which is true. And until you're having sex, the red pill women should be disregarded in the same way you would disregard any woman or any group throwing shit tests, agree and amplify, and fogging with a high helping of amuse mastery. That's the first half. So to sum up, married red pill women really hate the married red pill guys because we are anathema to their strategy. The idea is the red pill, though, they're not really seen as a threat in this same internet arguing way. It's just a bunch of single guys that promise they're never going to get married, so they think, whatever, I don't want you anyway. But the married red pill one, these are married guys and they're actively working against it, so they get mad and then we take the bait and then we end up looking like a bunch of, beta male husbands. You get the idea. It's completely a waste of time, and the big lesson to take from that first part is don't argue with women about this stuff. Don't act, do. And we know that. And that's the worst part. We knew it, but we still did it. And that's why there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. And it's why If somebody's trying in earnest when they make these very obvious mistakes, yeah, I'll point it out. But you can't be too hard on the guy. Like it's in our DNA to want to argue our point and make sure we're right and use logic. And it takes a lot of work to completely shed that from your system. And it's never truly gone. We just get very good at identifying it. For example, I talk about the learning process for unplugging guys. It's at first you screw up and you have no idea what happened. Then you start to learn what happened. And then you screw up, and then afterwards you're like, oh, I did this. You know why you screwed up. Then from after there, you practice a little more. The next step is you're screwing up, but you stop yourself right in the middle of screwing up and you reset. You're like, all right, you know what? Never mind. Next step after that, you catch yourself just before you start screwing up, and then you don't. And then the last step is you just don't screw up anymore. And this is ultimately where this whole little argument with a bunch of chicks online came from, is a bunch of us like, all right, we don't screw up anymore. But then we realize we're not quite there yet. We're still catching ourselves in the middle of a screw up. But hey, that was 8 years ago. So if you're still doing that now, I don't know what to tell you. So Jack Ten of Hearts chimes in, and he has an alternative theory to this, which I actually kind of agree with. So I don't think that's why this is. I don't think this is some existential issue. They just cherry pick the retards here who hit on cashiers to make their wives feel dread, and then whine that everything here doesn't work. And every subreddit in question, every media publication, and there's been a lot of like Forbes and Daily Beast, all kinds of like mainstream media articles are written about it. They've actually got, if you look up Married Red Pill online, the first thing that pops up is somebody else's SEO article about how we're horrible people. So like it's there. It's not just some small niche thing. Anyway, so everybody that craps on us, there's the red pill, the blue pill, purple pill debate, the red pill women, whatever. I think this is the root cause and not some sort of cognitive dissonance because what we say violates their own core principle beliefs. Now, I know there's a lot of married red pill guys who have been here for a while and think the red pill made them better men in any paradigm that you want to use. And they can rebuild that for other men, and other men are just retards and don't do it right. But here's the thing. Nobody gives a shit about that. Nobody cares. Why? Because fundamentally, an organization is often judged by their worst actors. That's just how it goes. And if the other members try to disown those actors, then it's impossible to do that without being countered that you're making a no true Scotsman argument. This is especially true if the organization doesn't have a singular leader. Like is there a Black Lives Matter thought leader? Not really. There definitely isn't an equivalent to Martin Luther King. So when some black guy kills 2 cops in New York City, was that an action condoned by Black Lives Matter? And he has an article linking to it that shows these kind of arguments and why they always seem weird. So without a singular thought leader to say, no, what the fuck, we protest this kind of stuff, but we will not ever condone this behavior, then it doesn't matter. Because it's not just that guy who shot the police, but it's enough other members on, the Twitter saying, yeah, they had it coming, blah, blah, blah. Conversely, the guy, Robert Deere, who shot up a Planned Parenthood center a few months ago, is going to be attached to the pro-life movement in the same way. There are enough pro-life nutbags that actually condone this shit that there's no singular thought leader to say, no, wait, this is not us and this is not what we do. Or you see some public opinions towards Muslims. Why don't more Muslims condemn ISIS? Oh, they do, and pretty much constantly, but it's a religion of 1.6 billion people, so no imam or sheikh or other leader can arguably speak for all of them. Would it be great if there was a Muslim pope who could say they aren't Muslims and actually they'll burn in hell? That would probably stop most people from getting angry and yelling, every Muslim's a terrorist, at random town meetings over building permits, but there isn't, so this happens. And what that poor fucking guy presenting his plans for the building permits is supposed to say? He sounds just as inept as Blue Pill Professor does trying to defend the married red pill to anyone. This is why nobody gets a shit. Nobody gives a shit. He actually references here Hunter Drew. At that time he was called the Family Alpha though. So he's like, I'm going to page the Family Alpha because I think he realized this a long time ago. If his content is going to go anywhere. Hasn't. The red pill brand is fucking deadweight anchor more than anything. If you strip down the unapologetically masculine tone from his blog, I think you'd find his content actually overlapped a lot more with the Promise Keepers or the Good Man Project than anything on the Red Pill subreddit. That take aged very well. What I think is a great and much needed niche in the modern world of marital advice for all the Evo Psych stuff that the Red Pill likes to promote, classic Evil Psych Evo Psych would describe to all men as being compelled to spread our seed. It's a very red pill thing to want to have kids, right? How could it not be? According to Evo Psych, blah, 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 blah. So on that premise, since all of our social and legal structures are optimized for having kids in the context of legal marriage, and since the entirety of the red pill advice stops somewhere around have a vasectomy and spin plates, well, it seems very fucking clear that there's a need to extend and adapt this school of thought into modern marital life, even if it means contradicting the core praxeology from which it evolved. And this is why everybody is destined to hate us. We have to contradict TRP, because by definition, being pure red pill and successfully raising offspring is contradictory, so that's why they hate us. And yet these contradictions won't be clear to all the chicks or anybody else who's arguing or predisposed to hate us. We have no singular thought leader to make these contradictions and distinctions clear. The married red pill moderators might be the closest thing, but even they don't speak for all of us.
From the author and content creator that brought you the heartfelt, the F trophies for clout, the 6-foot-tall Tate, and the not funniest member of Rule Zero, Volume 2, Dread.
I'm going to take a pause here because this goes on for a little bit more, and I'll see if I can sum it up as best I can here. Jack's point is that because the red pill, like what we know of as the red pill, it's a very loose, unstructured, ad hoc grouping of people. There is no leadership, there's no hierarchy. It's very similar to all the other things you've seen pop up in the last 20 years. That's like Black Lives Matter, Occupy Wall Street, the Tea Party, like any loose-fitting organization. ISIS. Not saying we're that, but, you know. And the military's had the same problem. The military's always had, like, if you screw up in uniform, you didn't screw up. The military screwed up. You'll always be associated with whatever group you're attached to. And that's just a fundamental part of it. And when there's nobody to say, no, he's not part of it, then ultimately you're stuck in this place where you get to be judged by your worst actors. And that's true. The people that agree with you are already part of it. The people that don't agree with you will find, and if you're of any size, you're going to have one idiot. Like, look, right now I got Myron Gaines running his mouth about Red Bulls and the newest iPhone and hoes and whatever. And he's out there, and I could sit here and tell you, oh, he's not real red pill, but like, who the fuck am I to say? And who the fuck is he to say he's not? It's the nature of the beast. This place will never be attractive. And if you're of any size, there's always going to be some idiot out there. The problem is that in order to have an idea of a red pill within a relationship, it's fundamentally against a pure distilling of red pill. The idea of red pill is it just takes the evolutionary psych thing that guys just want to, RK selection thing, knock up as many women as possible, which, fine, whatever. You can have that as your goal if you want to. It's not my place to judge. But if you are going to use the same praxeology within a relationship, you have to admit that there's a bit of a contradiction there, especially since most child-rearing scenarios here are more legal status. Like marriage isn't even a contract. It's a legal status. And for most women, you're not going to have kids unless you're within a legal marriage, or in the case of Canada, common law now. Like most people I know aren't married. They're common law married. And that still achieves the same result. Legal recognition. So you have to accept there's a contradiction there, and you're working within a system based on imperfect rules. And that's what he's saying. And that's why everybody hates it, because the red pill guys hate it because, well, you're not sticking to the pure distilled thing of it. And the red pill women are hating it. It's like, well, you're adding those misogynist guys to our great little longhouse, and nobody's happy. So really, ultimately, you have to not give a fuck. Anyways, continuing on with this one. If there's a reason that the blue pill professor gets so frustrated, I think it's this. He feels like he represents the married red pill, yet as we're set up, he doesn't have the standing to actually be a thought leader. If we really cared about our external reputation, we'd have a lot of changes to our intake funnel so that we would stop having idiots who post stupid shit like this every day. And he makes a reference to a post of a guy talking about he would take a girl, if he had a one-night stand with her, he'd have her spend the night, and then the next morning he would crush Plan B pills into her orange juice and make her breakfast. Highly illegal. Do not do that. Do not do that. There is nothing good about a sexual strategy that puts your ass in prison. Heaven forbid if they have a reaction and you end up with a murder case on you. So don't do that. But he's like, yeah, that stuff's going to be there and you can't get rid of it. So you can't denounce it and you can't be a thought leader for that. So, because Hunter, Drew, can be the family alpha pope, blue pill professor cannot be the red pill pope. Nobody can. We're not set up that way. If we were, the married red pill pope could say things like, stop talking about anything that sounds like active dread or blah, 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 blah. But Hunter can say this if he cared to. Professor can't. If he or anybody else did, there would probably be a mass exodus because, like I said, this isn't that kind of community. And even if we agreed 100% with what the MRP Pope decrees, a lot of us would still bounce because who the fuck is here thinking they can act like the fucking Pope? In fact, this place not having a thought leader is why it was so appealing to begin with, because it makes it a great place to discuss and synthesize ideas with other people. Personally, I see it as a hobbyist club where everybody brings in their handmade furniture, model airplanes or whatever, and talk about what works best. And I say I think someone's model airplane looks like shit, but that's just my opinion, man. Some conventional wisdom will evolve from these hobbyist groups, like the best brand of glue is X. But that's just our opinion, united by a loose consensus, and also valid to be questioned at any time. And this is all of my typical long-winded way of also agreeing that this shit is all pointless, but not because it has anything to do with a dueling sexual strategy. These people don't think we're losers because we somehow threaten their sexual strategy. They think we're losers because too many of our members act like fucking losers. It doesn't matter if they're few and far between, and all of our veteran people are very much not losers or individually condemn the losers, like I said earlier. Some people think Black Lives Matter are cop killers because too many of them kill cops. Some people think Muslims are terrorists because too many of them are terrorists. That's just going to be how it goes. So welcome to... There's a couple mental models to put out of this, like welcome to the red pill. Ideally, it is. It's a very loose hobbyist place. You don't want any type of leadership to it because as soon as you have that, the goal then becomes a hierarchy. It's a red ocean, blue ocean thing. But ultimately, once you put somebody in charge, a group of those people will make their mission to extend on that hierarchy by appealing to that guy. And any one person is not going to have all the answers, so it just doesn't work. That's what the Good Man Project did. That's what most of the MRA types do. They always try to appeal to some like central authority, morality, and ultimately that's how women structure these sort of relationship conversations anyway. Because then when you have a hierarchy, whoever's at the top of the hierarchy can dictate the morality of the group. That's not what we need here. It needs to be amoral. Anything's on the table so long as it's valid. You get illegal examples, we've considered that to be not valid because you can't be alpha in prison, you know? And you get a lot of hate for that. And it doesn't have to be bigger than this. It's just, yeah, if you put a space together, and don't get me wrong, this space is here for men who are struggling. Your marriage sucks, your sex life sucks, your divorce sucked. You may have been the best guy in the world, but right now you're a piece of shit. And so if you go to a space that's designed for piece of shit guys to start not being pieces of shit, you're going to be surrounded by pieces of shit. And don't kid yourself, a lot of those pieces of shit are only there because they want to have company. They don't want to improve, they don't want to fix, they sure as hell don't want to contribute. They just want to go into the He-Man Woman Haters Club and shit on women with a Red Bull. So, once you accept that premise, you are going to be surrounded by losers. There is value here based on a loose consensus. Nothing is canon. Everything is up for debate, but it all has to be backed up by experience. As long as you accept those premises, there is a lot to gain from this space, man or woman. The problem is, women like to argue, men like to be validated, and none of this works if you buy into that. So again, with everything, frame. As long as you have frame, all of this will work. So, hope you enjoyed that leisurely stroll down memory lane, and I, for one, do not miss it at all. Yeah, I'm not even going to read the rest.